Good evening, everybody. Those who can stand, excuse me, those who can stand, please stand for our opening statement, which will be read by the Vice Chairman. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Full Council on the 14th of February 2023, St Valentine's Day. As you are all aware, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. For the benefit of those watching online, I would ask that members introduce themselves and the ward they represent before speaking. Thank you. So, agenda item 1 is apologies.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Janet Dover, Councillor Les Fry, Councillor Matt Hall, Councillor David Gray, Councillor Ryan Hope, Councillor Susan Cocking, Councillor Bill Pipe and Councillor David Took.
Thank you, Susan. Agenda item 2 is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of October 2022. Those in favour, by a show of hands, please, that I sign these minutes. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, thank you. I have no specific announcements this evening from the Chair, so we move on to agenda item 5, public participation, questions and statements. Question 1, Tom Villiers, has been withdrawn. I believe a response has been given to Mr. Villiers and he's very happy with that. So we go to question 2, a question from Sue Bennett, please.
Madam Chairman, we fix around 20,000 potholes every year. We aim to permanently repair potholes on our first visit. Our pothole repairs include more extensive patching of failed areas surrounding the defect instead of just repairing the immediate pothole. This approach will reduce the likelihood of further potholes forming in the future. From the current DCC Highways website page, Roads, Highways and Maintenance, Fixing Potholes. In our village of Shroton on the 15th of January 2023, I reported with photographs 14 of the very worst potholes. They weren't all the potholes that existed, but they were all over 4 centimetres deep and longer than, it's 30 centimetres, I've made a mistake there, 30 centimetres wide, the width of a dinner plate. 5 were filled on the 19th of January 2023 by a Velocity 1 method. By the 27th of January 2023, I was re-reporting the worst that had been 10.5 centimetres deep was already breaking up with a large deep pocket at its edges. It was refilled on the 31st of January 2023, again leaving a large deep pocket. I re-reported this, plus 2 of the other original 5 potholes, on the 2nd and 3rd of this month, as they were all beginning to break up and showing jagged edges. The reporting of potholes in our village is now a weekly, if not daily, task for the villagers. We acknowledge that we are not a large village, but we have a thriving rural economy. We have Wessex Internet, Meggie Moo award-winning farm shop, a large dairy farm, a well-known local pub sited at the bottom of a historic earthworks owned by the National Trust, and several work-from-home enterprises. All of these rely on the good standard of the roads to conduct their business. And suffice it to say, ordinary villagers would also like to travel in safety. The team of workers return over again, but they're fighting a losing battle as the roads are not able to hold the fill. And I have some sympathy for these teams as they are being asked to do a job for which an adequate solution is not being given. And to borrow a quote from Geoffrey Howe, it's rather like sending our opening batsmen to the crease only for them to find before the first ball is bowled, their bats have been broken by the team captain. I am now receiving updates which say not to use Velocity 1 as site managers report the fill will not stay. And this was evident from the very first instance. The practice of dob and fill and not to return is clearly not working. It is inadequate on our roads and a complete waste of time and money. The team has been watched last week not clearing the hole, not putting down sticky seal, and not tamping down after the gravel mix. Our roads look as if a family of moles have taken up residence. What arrangements are in place for monitoring the repairs so the right repair can be made the first time?
Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. You will now receive a response from Councillor Ray Bryan.
Yes, I'm Councillor Ray Bryan, portfolio holder for highways, travel, environment and leading on climate change. Mrs. Bennett, thank you for the question. A lot of details in there, and hopefully I can put your mind at rest on some of them. Regarding the condition and maintenance of roads in Shroton and, is it spelled Irwin County? I'll let you say it. A highways maintenance plan, which can be viewed on the Dorset Council website, sets out clear service levels for maintenance activities, which includes our reactive response to potholes. We acknowledge your concern for public safety and the frustration of repeat repairs. We are committed to a right first-time approach. However, during the coldest and wettest months of the year, we sometimes need to carry out temporary repairs to make them safe before a permanent repair can be made. All Dorset roads are part of an inspection regime where our officers inspect defects and monitor repairs. However, if anybody wants to report a pothole, the best way is to do it online via the Council's website. I would add, I've taken your comments very seriously and will be talking to the highways officers to make sure we look at where we're failing.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. We next receive a question from Nigel Bennett, please.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. In September 2019, Jack Wiltshire Dorset Highways highlighted problems with many Dorset rural roads, particularly potholes and surface cracking damage. He said, "These roads have become so damaged they require extensive repairs to ensure that homes and businesses can continue to be safely accessed. They have little or no foundation, and under the road surface is essentially the gravel track that they have evolved from over many years." He said, "Without the money we've been awarded from the National Pothole Fund, we would have to continue with costly, reactive, piecemeal, short-term repairs on these roads, which isn't good enough." Mr. Wiltshire's comments perfectly describe the state of large patches of Telegraph Street, Bessel's Lane, Fairfield Road and Newfield Lane, which surround Shroton, and are used by the heavy articulated milk tankers, tractors, delivery lorries, etc., hauling for Park Farm, the Solar Farm, and Wessex Internet, as well as private cars. These stretches, apart from the very numerous potholes, which are temporary filling, are breaking up, most with extensive cracking, which releases large stones and flints. Other areas show where the surface is so worn away that the bedrocks are exposed, are in the process of breaking free. The continuation of Newfield Lane to the Crossroads Junction with the Child Oakford to Shaftesbury Road is also in an appalling state. The cracks appear adjacent to a pothole due to the heavy traffic pounding the edge of the pothole. With rain and frost, as water turns to ice, it expands, thus widening the cracks. So more water gets in, freezes, and the cracks continue to grow wider until the surface breaks free. proper surface rebuilding to large stretches of these roads, as described by Mr. Wiltshire, would extend their life for many years, obviating the inadequate and very temporary yearly patch-up job, saving considerable costs in the long term. These patch-up jobs, as Mr. Wiltshire said, just aren't good enough. My question is, when can we expect proper surface repairs, as described by Mr. Wiltshire just 16 months ago, to take place?
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We will ask Councillor Ray Brown to give you a response as well. Thank you.
Mr. Bennett, thanks for the question. Most of our highway funding comes from the Department for Transport. As this is a set amount, roads near the end of their life are assessed by experienced engineers to establish the best treatment option. A works programme is then set up based on our available funding. Last year, we produced a forward-looking road maintenance programme based on the most up-to-date road conditions, primarily for the A, B and C road network. Newfield Lane and Fairfield Road have been identified for work to be carried out this financial year. January's pattern of very cold overnight temperatures on already wet roads has had a significant impact across the county. We're taking this into account as we assess the rest of the programme that will need to be delivered this year, based on the prioritisation criteria set out in our policy. The full list of schemes planned for the financial year 2023-24 will be ready for viewing by the end of March.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Okay. So question 4 will be put by Jane Ashdown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When members of Stand, Save the Area north of Dorchester, have met councillors to discuss the progress of the revised Dorset local plan, and in particular DOR 13, we have frequently been told that councillors are unable to comment in case their remarks are seen as predetermination. This seems to run counter to the role of a local councillor as set out on the council's website. And I quote, "Councillors act as a communication channel between the council and its citizens. They promote citizens' interests and needs to the council and assist the public to better understand the issues being addressed by local government and the services it provides. Stand trusts that the council does not wish to stifle continuing public discussion regarding the draft local plan and therefore values the role of councillors as communications channel." In December, Councillor Walsh was quoted in the media as saying, "The North Dorchester Garden Community Development is already part of the adopted West Dorset, Weymouth and Portland local plan and is part of the future of Dorset." He later apologised for this misleading statement, saying it was not an indication of predetermination on his part, but simply a mistake. Will the leader of the council now accept that members of the council may express opinions in public about the proposals in the draft local plan and that this may be considered an indication of predisposition rather than predetermination, or in the final analysis, that they could simply be mistaken. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I'd like to invite Councillor Flower to give you a response.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Sorry about my voice tonight, everyone. I've got a very heavy cold at the end of it, so I'm struggling a little bit. Like anyone else, a councillor can be predisposed to a particular point of view. That is to be expected and is, I am told, perfectly lawful. What we must not do is approach decision-making already made, with our minds already made up in advance and unwilling to listen. There are dangers in a councillor associating themselves closely with one particular pressure group and speaking after having listened to only that group. Doing so gives the impression that they have made up their minds in advance and even that they are speaking on behalf of the group. My encouragement to councillors is to seek advice from the monitoring officer before committing in public to a particular point of view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower, and thank you, Jane. Question 5 is put on behalf of Councillor Luke Wakeling and Councillor Colin Huckle, and it will be put online by Councillor Luke Wakeling. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Dorset Council. It is most disappointing that the Community Governance Review Steering Group has taken the view of an extremely small minority of residents, with 9 comments for option 1 and 32 comments for option 2. That is a net response of just 23 comments from 2 towns with a combined population of 60,000 people. The steering group has eliminated one option based on the input of just 0.04% of residents. The LGBCE guidance is quite technical, but clear what principles should be followed to create good community boundaries. Even more disappointingly, within the responses received, very few responses actually address the principles required by the guidance. While some people have strong opinions about boundaries for emotional or historic reasons, the task at hand is to set boundaries fit for the 21st century and in accordance with the applicable laws. In the evidence collected, there is very little to support the option carried forward. Weymouth Town Council's proposal was a modification of option 1, improving those parts which offered poor democracy and did not follow the principles in the guidance. In particular, the requirement to address anomalous boundaries in sections 15 to 17, 26 and 84 and 85, the need for good electoral equality, which is in sections 161 to 166, and creating good building blocks to improve the upper boundaries in section 85, or whenever they might be next reviewed. Weymouth Town Council is an elected body representing the 53,000 residents of Weymouth and made an honest submission that follows the guidance in good faith. It is quite undemocratic that this alternative will not be taken forward to a public consultation. The draft wording in your papers tonight has 2 wards proposed, Nottington and Lanehouse, that have extremely poor electoral quality, fewer than half the number of electors per member of the other wards. This impacts negatively on the fairness of elections across Weymouth and is contrary to sections 164, 166 and 167 of the guidance. Weymouth Town Council provides significant services, particularly in relation to the visitor offer and tourism, that support huge economic benefits to the area. Residents who are connected to Weymouth and benefiting from the services that Weymouth Town Council provides should be within the Weymouth boundary and sharing the cost for these services. The option that most closely met the requirements of the LGBCE has been discarded before the main public consultation without good reason. The residents of Chickrell and Weymouth have now got no choice, just one bad option. Why has the steering group ignored the very clear guidance? To have done so makes this proposal flawed.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeling. I will ask Councillor Spencer-Flower to give you a response.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, when formulating the draft recommendations for public consultation, the Community Governance Review Working Group have taken into account many factors, not solely the responses received during the initial public consultation that ran from the 1st of November to the 28th of December. This includes the requirement of legislation, the guidance issued by the Local Government Boundary Commission for England, electoral forecasts for the distribution of electors likely to occur in the next 5 years, as well as the responses from the public consultation. The working group has also taken into account the Local Boundary Review Commission's report that was prepared in the creation of Dorset Council wards. Based on evidence received, reflect the statutory criteria of equality of representation, reflecting community interest and identity, and providing for effective and convenient local government. The working group was particularly mindful of the guidance that says that no parish ward should be divided by a district boundary when reasonably practical and have strictly applied the principles wherever possible. The situation in Weymouth is fairly unique in Dorset, where the majority of parish wards cross principal council boundaries as a result of Dorset Council and Weymouth Town Council being created at the same time, rather than the principal council that created the Town Council warding, nor the Local Government Boundary Commission creating Dorset Council warding, having an awareness of each other's proposals, proposed warding arrangements. Dorset Council attended a meeting with Weymouth Town Council prior to the closure of the recent period of public consultation and reiterated that the Council would strictly apply the Commission's guidance that parish wards should not be divided by Dorset Council ward boundaries wherever it was reasonably practical. Contrary to this guidance offered at the meeting, Weymouth Town Council submitted a warding proposal not based on either of the two options being consulted, which crossed Dorset Council ward boundaries. Whilst the Commission has based Dorset Council wards on evidence received, the Council has sought to follow wherever possible the working group, recognising that Weymouth Town Council did not feel the boundaries accurately reflect the communities, and for that reason, full Council today is being asked to agree and undertaking to work with the Town Council when the Dorset Council wardings are next reviewed to put forward a proposal that both parties feel represents the community within the parish of Weymouth. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Thank you, Councillor Wakeling.
Thank you.
Agenda item 6 is public participation, petitions and deputations, and there are none. So moving on to agenda item 7, we have announcements and reports from the leader. Over to you, Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to reflect on a couple of items that I've got in my leader's bulletin for this council meeting. I think the first one is the support. We've got a report coming to Cabinet on the 28th of February. It deals with, I've asked officers some weeks ago to look at the pressures of the cost of living crisis, the inflation levels that have gone up. And as a result of that, lots of vulnerable residents have found it really difficult to make ends meet. Although we've had lots of government support, which we then redistributed, I felt there was an opportunity for us as a council to reflect on our responsibilities within the community, see what we could do to help residents. And to that end, and I'm not going to go on too long about this tonight, because I've got before me here the 29-page report that I commissioned back at the beginning of January. It's going to Cabinet on the 28th of February, where we're going to be looking to distribute £2 million worth of unallocated reserves. We've got it's very well documented, and a great piece of work been done by officers and members in creating a really strong overview, governance, so we get it right, and the money gets targeted and it gets into the places that most needed. So I'm really pleased about that. And it's something that I've been particularly keen on. So I'm very pleased that I wanted to trailer it tonight because from my point of view, it was important that members get an understanding in the chamber that we're a caring council. And this is coming to Cabinet, as I say, on the 28th. We can hit the ground running beyond that meeting. We can get on with delivering this initiative in the community. We did a Facebook Live session. I didn't even know what it meant until someone was doing Facebook Live. So we did one with Gary, myself, Laura and Aidan on the budget. And we took live questions. I have to say it was a great experience. And we were able to sort of spend, I think, 45, 50 minutes online. And the feedback has all been very, very positive. But, you know, I think we had about 1,800 hits, which is pretty good for council type stuff. So, again, you know, you can read a bit more about that. Hopefully some of you will have watched it. You never know. There's nothing else on telly. Can I just reflect on Councillor Ray Bryan attending a Transport Select Committee? He managed to get there through, I think, support from one of the local MPs, and he gave a really good account of himself, again, putting across the voice of Dorset at a national level. So all credit to Ray for doing that. I put it in because it's an example of what we've said we were doing all along, which is lobbying for the benefit of the people of Dorset at a national level. And we're doing it on a whole range of things. That's just one example. Then we've got the, as you all know, we've got the levelling up funding, which is a great achievement. And I read some stuff in the media when there were some councils complaining that they didn't get anything. We didn't get anything the first time either. So we stood back, reflected, looked at our bid, took some advice on what we needed to do to go back with a different bid. And lo and behold, we got 19.5 million quid, which we've added, I think, 3.5 million to that. And that'll be used for infrastructure funding within the Weymouth area. That's huge. And that's come about. There's a lot of hard work gone into lobbying, both at ministerial level and senior civil servants. So great achievement, for Dorset. And last but not least, before my voice completely goes, some of you will remember that within the first 6 months of this council, we had a local government peer review. And I was asked when they arrived, one of the early questions from the lead officer, why are you doing it so quickly? And I said, because I want to learn. We've said what we're going to do. I want to know now whether what we're going to do is the right thing to do, rather than wait till the end and discover it wasn't. In other words, it's work in progress. We got a great deal out of that, and they came back at the end of last year, September. And there's a report coming to Cabinet on the 28th, so you can look at the detail. But it's a pretty good report, actually. Have we got everything right? No. Have we got most things right? Yes. And we've achieved many, many of the things that we said we'd do. So I think that reflects well on this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Councillor Walsh, did you wish to say something?
Yes, please, Chairman. And I don't wish to embarrass our leader, but we've been constantly saying about how we're lobbying government and how we are talking to government and that government are listening. They are listening. As you've heard, Councillor Bryan was at a select committee on highways, and as you know, I go up to Parliament and talk on the New Communities Bill with Parliament. Well, I was really encouraged last Wednesday when listening to the Parliament and Mr Gove, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, when he not only spoke of Dorset and the work we're doing in Dorset, but he actually mentioned by name the leader, Councillor Spencer Flower. Now, we are talking to government. Government are listening. And government are taking notice of us. So when we say we are lobbying, it's not blowing smoke. We're not talking rubbish. They're listening. And we have a lot to say. So let's continue lobbying, and let's continue making them listen. So thank you. And thank you for what you're doing, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Do we have any questions for the leader? Sorry, I can't quite. Councillor Briggs. Biggs, sorry. Councillor Richard Biggs.
Yes, Richard Biggs, Dorchester Poundbury Ward. I was very interested in your comments about using £2 million of unallocated funds. I don't recall in any of the budget meetings we had being told that there was £2 million available to use and other things, and why couldn't we have had a debate about what that could be used? From the sound of it, that seems like a perfectly good use of that money, and I wouldn't be against that in any means. But I think, why not do it before the budget's been set? This is the time to involve the council, not another decision made by Cabinet that's already been decided. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs.
Councillor Paul Kimber, the Isle of Portland. Mine was around the same question, Spencer, around the £2 million. And the Portland Town Council with not so much grandiose amounts of money, but who knows what we've got hidden on Portland. And we've set up a breakfast club, which has been very, very successful. Will you look into these areas with this money? I'm delighted that you're taking something from the reserves to this. Thank you.
Councillor Laura Miller to respond.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Yeah, with the cost of living work that we've been doing, we already have that data coming forward, so we know where this money can be used to its best effect. You're absolutely right, we have supported a number of sustainable food projects. We continually support them. I have the data on that as well. We've supported warm spaces. I don't particularly like the term warm spaces. I prefer public living rooms or something like that. But nevertheless, we are supporting those projects. I think the point about this money is that we would also like it to have a legacy effect. We would like to be able to, for example, I mean, you'll see the detail when it comes to Cabinet, but we would like to put some money into Healthy Homes Dorset so that we leave people with a legacy of homes that are less costly to run and better insulated, things like that. And the reason, you know, we've gone through this with officers who are really close to the detail on this. And we wanted to get the money out there to the people that need it as soon as possible. We know that we've had huge demand on our household support fund. That opened and closed in a day. That's no secret. That's a clear demonstration that people are struggling. And we, like I said, we're working with this group that's been going. We looked at Dorset together during the pandemic, and that group cost of living working with Aidan Dunn was born out of that. And so we have these organisations, these people on the ground, they know where the help is needed. And I think it was the leader's intention, certainly mine, working with officers to just get that help and support out as soon as we could. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the leader, please? Councillor Christopher.
I would like to congratulate Councillor Spencer Flower for all the good work that he does. And Councillor Kimber and Councillor Biggs should note that on the fourth day of this month in Taunton, I had the opportunity to talk one-to-one with the Secretary of State for Transport, and I lobbied him. I lobbied him for improvements to the Heart of Wessex railway line, which passes through Weymouth and Dorchester on the way to Bath and Bristol. And I lobbied for improvements to that line because I recognise, though this might not be an issue for my ward, the Marshwood Vale ward, I recognise that Weymouth does have difficulties. It has some of the most deprived wards, and we, as a Conservative group...
Excuse me, Councillor Christopher. Do you have your question to ask?
To the point of would Councillor Kimber and Councillor Biggs agree with me that Councillor Flower is doing a tremendous job. Thank you.
Can I answer?
You may, yes.
All right, thank you. Councillor Paul Kimber, Isle of Portland. And Portland, yeah. And I've never been in the position of actually answering the question directed at me at full council, but I'm delighted to do so on behalf of my community. We already know, and you said it in the first line, that Weymouth and Portland, and I'm going to use the word my colleagues, Weymouth and Portland, have a high level of deprivation, poor wages, and poor areas of social housing. Now, we do know that we've got to work hard on all these types of schemes of opening up transport links, and I also do write to my colleagues in the Labour Party to say that Dorset has got to be on the map. So it's not just a case of one particular party trying to steal the...
Excuse me, Councillor. This is your supplemental question. I'd quite like to see a question on the end of it, please. With respect, that question wasn't directed at you. It was directed to the floor, and I say no more. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now move to agenda item 8, questions from Dorset councillors. And I will invite question 1 to be submitted by Councillor Paul Kimber. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Paul Kimber, Isle of Portland. As you know, the heart of our community is our hospital in just off in Fortune's Well in Castletown. The Portland community were very upset and were disappointed by the headlines in the Echo on the 16th of December and also at the public meeting we had last week, that the future hospital, despite the needs, we need to get an MRU reopened with wards. As the Dorset Council knows, the Portland community showed their concerns and reiterated the need for an MRU to reopen, linking arms around the hospital. Leading members of the Portland community recently campaigned successfully for a COVID vaccination clinic to be held at the Portland Hospital. This was very successful, and again, the feedback from the Portland community was very well received. The Portland Hospital Development Unit has also continually campaigned for the Portland MRU to reopen and will continue to. Portland needs an MRU. Will this much needed MRU ever reopen? That's my question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimber, and you will receive a response from Councillor Peter Wharf.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Peter Wharf, Deputy Leader, Member for West Purbeck. I'm going to give you 2 formal responses, but I need to put some context against these in order to explain it. I absolutely get your question, and you asked the question in December, and so rather than making you wait until now, I sent you a response in December because I thought it only fair that you understood where we were coming from. And I said, you still want to raise the question? And you said, yes, you do. So this is, I have actually followed part of it up already, and you've had the first response already. My first response, which I will give you formally, is that primarily this is the responsibility of Dorset Healthcare Trust, but that's not the greatest helpful answer. And what I suggested to you was that you should try and contact Dorset Healthcare Trust and try and contact your MP. What I have done is I've contacted and spoken to Matt Prosser, the Chief Executive, Jonathan Price, the Corporate Director for Commissioning, and Sam Crowe, the Director of Public Health. And following those conversations, and whether you choose this to be cause and effect or not, I now have an answer from the appropriate person in Dorset Healthcare Trust, which I will give you as my second response. My third response that I will be giving you is a verbal response to a recent meeting I had with Richard Drax MP, who is obviously the MP for the area, and I will summarise, but I can't guarantee his views on it and how you may contact him. Hopefully that's got the three responses I'm giving in context, right? So the first response is, thank you very much for the question, Paul. As you know, I forwarded you an update via email in advance of full council, which highlighted that whilst the Portland MIU remains closed, residents are able to access the urgent care unit at Weymouth Hospital. In my response, I pointed out that this is a decision that rests with Dorset Healthcare as the provider of the service. However, I did also say that I would raise this matter with NHS Dorset and Dorset Healthcare NHS Trust as the provider of the service. So that's my first response. My second response is, I have since received this response from Dawn Dawson, Acting Chief Executive of Dorset Healthcare. She states, quote, there are no immediate plans for changes with the MIU position. We continue to try and manage the urgent care demand across the system in the most efficient way according to the resources available, vacancies and sickness levels. Weymouth Urgent Treatment Centre is the local alternative for residents. Dawn also highlighted that the Trust was holding a listening event on the 8th of February, which I believe you went to hear firsthand from local people and to try and understand the needs that may not be met locally, not just from urgent care. So that's the end of her formal response. And the third thing I did was I had a meeting with Richard Drax. When I explained both the answer I was going to give you, I explained what I then believed to be the answer I was going to get from Dorset Healthcare, which has turned out to be broadly that. And I asked Richard Drax what his views are. He is completely sympathetic with the view that you raise, and he is open to communication and contact to try and help with this. I'm not going to, you have to accept this is my summary of what he said. What he's not going to do is turn up and be vilified by a group looking into something else. But what he will do is he is happy to help you. I cannot directly influence this, but what we have tried to do is do as much as we can to support the needs which, by and large, most of the people I've talked to support. Thank you, Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Councillor Wolfe. Is that right, Councillor Kimber?
Yes, thank you. You've given me some leads to go down, and I will follow those up. Thank you.
Smashing, thank you. Our second question is submitted by Councillor Matt Hall and will be read by Councillor Nick Ireland.
On behalf of Councillor Matt Hall, who represents Sherborne. As Dorset Council moves towards a new local plan, will Councillor Walsh confirm that Dorset Council will use this time wisely to develop additional supplementary planning documents such as, my screen's gone off, sorry, such as Householder's Guide to Extension Design to enable a better understanding of planning requirements and a more consistent approach to the decision-making process. Such documents are proven to assist councillors, town and parish councils, developers, the wider public and town planners.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. You will receive a response now from Councillor David Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Ireland, and please pass on my thanks to Councillor Hall. The priority area of work for the planning policy team continues to be the local plan. If resources allow, informal guidance for applicants may also be prepared, though we are likely to be cautious about preparing further supplementary planning documents at the moment, as the changes currently proposed by national government suggest that existing supplementary planning documents will only remain in force for a limited period once the new system is introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Next up, we have a second question submitted by Councillor Matt Hall, which will also be read out by Councillor Nick Ireland. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This question has slightly dated since it was submitted, so I'm paraphrasing slightly. So as the Kit Hill situation in Sherborne has passed its first birthday with no physical current sign of a solution, can the portfolio holder for highways please confirm what Dorset Council is doing to speed up the much needed and overdue repairs to the property wall that has so negatively impacted residents, businesses and tourists for far too long?
Thank you very much, Councillor Ireland. We now will hear a response from Councillor Ray Bryan.
First of all, can I thank you for reading the question on behalf of Matt Hall. Matt and John and I have been in regular communication on this, like probably every other day. That's the urgency that we've been putting behind it. My answer is going to be slightly modified to the question because we need to highlight the fact that things are happening now. Dorset Council fully recognises the concerns raised by the local councillors and also the local MP, Chris Loader, in relation to Kit Hill. Throughout this complex issue, both officers from Dorset Highways and Building Control have made sure that the safety of public has been maintained and the road is passable with traffic control. We have been in constant engagement with the owners, and we believe that the works needed are agreed and more information will be given in the very near future. The contractors responsible have been appointed and we are looking forward to the completion of the work. I would add that I had confirmed to me yesterday that we've had communication with the contractors and the survey engineers as to the work they're proposing, and I will give regular updates to the local members. I think it's worthwhile adding, to get the public perception on this right, this is not the fault of the owners. This came about by a vehicle hitting their wall and driving off without reporting the damage. The owners are responsible for their wall and are having to foot the bill for all the repairs. I just hope it doesn't happen to any of us. My sympathy absolutely goes with the owners, and my anger goes towards the driver that drove off without notifying anybody. I think it's fair to say that Sherborne has gone through quite a traumatic period over the last few months, not just with this one, but we have a slight problem with an electrical cable that we've also dealt with, thanks to the members giving me every assistance possible in trying to get these positions resolved. I look forward over the next few weeks to being able to inform the local members and the council in general and the general public that the road is open and working. We do think we're going to hit that target that has been given to us by the owner's engineers. We think we can hit that target fairly quickly. The work is already underway. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Councillor Bryan. We now ask Councillor Nick Ireland to submit his own question. Thank you.
So thank you, Chair, representing Crossways. And I ask this question as somebody who has benefited for the last 13 odd years with PV on my roof at home. And I find it really frustrating that we drive around the county and find existing houses and worse, new builds not having PV on the roof, and lots of commercial buildings with nothing. So the question is, with so many large commercial roofs across the county, could the respective portfolio holders outline what Dorset Council is doing to promote the system of prior approval for solar panel installations on commercial premises? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland, and we'll have a response from Councillor David Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for this question. The question makes it sound as if it's black and white, and as you're about to hear, it very much isn't, sadly. It is recognised that Dorset Council has a positive role to play in securing a net zero future, and our commitment to this is set out in the Climate Change and Ecological Emergency Strategy and Action Plan, a refresh of which is due to be considered by Cabinet in March. The planning system also has a vital role to play in supporting this, and Dorset Council is currently preparing interim guidance and a position statement on climate change, together with a sustainability checklist for planning applications and guidance for occupiers of listed buildings. With the agreement of Cabinet at its meeting in March, the position statement will be the subject of consultation before it is finalised. The installation or alteration of solar equipment on non-domestic premises benefits from permitted development rights. This is subject to limitations and conditions, one of which requires prior approval in some cases, such as where sites are within areas of outstanding natural beauty, conservation areas, or on listed buildings. Dorset Council must exercise care not to predetermine its position as the local planning authority in considering prior approval applications when this is needed. However, through our pre-application advice service, which is accessible via the Council's website, we can help any commercial or business operator to understand what may or may not require planning permission, and where permission is required, we'll be able to positively advise on any proposals for renewable energy generation. But thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walsh. So our last question is submitted by Councillor Howard Legg.
Thank you, Chair. Howard Legg, Upwey and Broadway. Church Street, Upwey gets flooded regularly following moderate or heavy rainfall. This has been experienced by local residents for decades. In fact, so many decades, I can't remember when it started. The appropriate local authority, currently Dorset Council, places flood signs on the road, puts cones in place, clears debris, cuts escape channels full of water, all of which have limited effect and follow the occurrence. The latest example of this follow-up action occurred in late January. No substantial works are undertaken to either prevent water covering the road or to drain it away before flooding occurs. When can local residents expect Dorset Council to fulfil its obligations to manage this problem before the road gets flooded and to ensure partners such as the Environment Agency as well as local landowners do what they are obligated to do?
Thank you, Councillor Legg. We'll ask Councillor Ray Bryan to stand up again. Thank you.
Councillor Legg, thank you for the question. Flooding is a big issue at the moment due to the weather conditions, and for those that have any doubt on the climate changing, they just need to see the amount of water we're now having to deal with. Thank you for raising the concerns about the drainage at Church Street, Upwey. Let me assure you that Dorset Council recognise that there is an issue here and that they are fulfilling their obligations to manage this problem. Colleagues from the Highways and Flood Risk Management teams are working with the Environment Agency to agree the next steps that need to be taken. The Highways team are currently designing a drainage improvement scheme that will involve replacement of about 60 metres of pipework. This still needs to be agreed by the Environment Agency, but we are working closely with them to obtain their support. And let me just assure you, Councillor Legg, this is in my focus. I will make sure that we get the issue resolved as soon as we possibly can.
Yes, Councillor Legg.
From that, please. It's rather like a piece of string. There's no end to it. Can you give me some dates as to when you hope something will be done?
Yes.
It must be something wrong with my voice. I do apologise. I thought I'd actually said that we're waiting for agreement from the Environmental Agency, which is not under my control, just so you know. But we are working closely with them to come up with the methods and the dates.
Thank you. Okay. Right. So we now come on to the main item of the evening, agenda item 9, which is the budget.
Madam Chairman, could I ask for clarification with the budget debate from your lawyer as to whether, as a second home owner in this county, I may remain in the chamber or leave the chamber? Is that appropriate this evening?
I think we have a little bit of confusion here. This would normally relate to the second homes debate, which is not happening this evening. So I'm going to ask Councillor Gary Suttle, please, to introduce the report and propose the recommendation. He's got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Councillor Gary Suttle, Swanage, representing Swanage and the finance portfolio holder. I'll declare an interest in the second home and leave at this stage. Right, okay. So this evening I'm presenting the budget and the medium-term financial plan. I've got a few notes. So first of all, let's look at the process that brings us to this point in time. The budget is about everybody's input, and to ensure that every member of this council has been engaged in the process, we started in October reporting our initial findings and continued to report the improvements on our line of thought as the year progressed, culminating in a strong budget cafe process, 2 excellent meetings with many members attending and giving insightful comment. I thought the meetings gave the information that we needed to consider the budget, and this in turn leading to members having a better understanding of the issues and allowing better and informed discussion, leading us to the paper before you. In this coming year, we are already discussing the process in 2023 and thinking how we can improve. And you may see some changes to the process, but the aim will always be an open process and interaction with all. I'd also like to thank the scrutiny chairs and members who are vital to this process. In particular this evening, I want to emphasise how this council embraces change, and in particular the challenge that is protecting our natural environment. We promised action in previous budgets, and are referring you to item 4 of this report. I believe that we have achieved significant steps forward. Government has played its part, and we've secured significant grants, in particular 19.2 million Salix grant, but you'll see that although this was the largest grant, we continue to be successful in obtaining significant funding to tackle carbon emissions and provide infrastructure for support to that aim. Most important to this is our own commitment to funding our own corporate director and now an additional 4 officers. We promise funding commitment to the long term and believe that we've achieved that initial step. This group will now be able to secure more funding and have the manpower to manage projects for the future. This remains very much in mind for any spend to save applications. To set a balanced budget is to adhere to our legal obligations. Budgets are about informed assumptions and ours are set out clearly in the papers. However, I'd like to take the opportunity to go over the key assumptions. Those assumptions are a council tax increase of 2%. This will mirror last year, and despite the increase in the level of the referendum limit, we believe that we can contain this budget by not taking the maximum at a time when Dorset residents are finding some of the hardest financial burdens that many have experienced in their lifetime. I see this as an opportunity to support our residents. Normally we compare this to a Band D property, and of course the increase from 1.99 to 2.99 would be only a matter of pence. But for some, it makes a difference of what to give a child for lunch. But I also ask you to think about the older generation who live in larger houses, paying significantly higher rates, higher council tax, but are victims of house price inflation. I've spoken to so many over the years who live on the basic pension in houses worth a lot, but in fact they were bought for next to nothing in today's terms many decades ago. It's not all about Band D. With our council tax nearing the higher end in England, we must attempt to do something to relieve that burden on Dorset Council residents. Council tax base, we have seen growth from 0.75% to 1.2%. This equates to around 1,800 Band D properties. The social care precept. Government increased the amount from 1% to 2% that this council can raise in the social care precept. And in order to continue to provide sustainable care services, meet the needs of some of our most vulnerable, we have made use of this increase. Social care remains a significant risk element for this council, and any improvement in funding options must be taken. We believe that government will expect councils to take this and may query any that don't make use of this precept. We may see it as additional burden on our council taxpayers, but government see it as a given opportunity. Sometimes we have to beg to differ. Business rates growth. Maybe not quite what it says in the title, but it's a welcome funding option from the government. In reality, the business rate multiplier, the amount your rateable value is multiplied to get to the actual business rates demand, is being frozen at 0.499. But as this will decrease in real terms our own collection, government will compensate us for the loss. A very prudent approach to this, and we do our own calculations based on local knowledge. Pay award. We increase our assumption to 4%. This is something that is negotiated nationally. Last year saw a substantial increase, and this was very much deserved settlement, and this was a very much deserved settlement. We think it unlikely that it will be as high this year, but we have doubled our original thought process from 2% to 4%. I've had discussions with some who think we're higher than is necessary. Equally, I've had some similar discussions with those who think it should be more. I believe that in the projected falling rate of inflation and the higher than anticipated settlement last year, 4% is a reasonable option for the purpose of this budget. General inflation. A figure of 6% has been included. It's the most difficult of figures to provide. Inflation currently is higher. Predictions are as diverse as negative inflation by year end. My thoughts are that inflation does not cover all of our expenditure. Staffing is one of our largest costs and is governed by national pay awards. Many contractual arrangements are for periods of time beyond this year and therefore outside of the inflationary burden. As for the amount of budget expenditure exposed to inflation, it's not 100%. As such, I believe this is a fair level to input. Going back to Q3 results, the inflation pressure in the last 3 months have yielded just £599,000 of increase. So we cannot say inflation is contained, but we're far better informed this year, and the majority of rising inflationary factors are already within our costs. Increase in fees and charges. At 5% and around half of the rate of inflation, increases in fees and charges are an inevitable fact of life. I understand there's some concerns over some of the charges, but some costs have to be passed on. And at 5%, as an overall average, I believe we've pitched at the right level. What we cannot and should not do is increase the rate of inflation and use that as a defence. We must be realistic in such charges, make sure they remain competitive and deliver the service they charge for. Pension, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It's a reduction in the pension deficit contribution, which is in fact negative. And on additional matters, the Council will set aside a contingency sum of 8.2 million, representing 2% of the budget. You'll note that the addendum to the budget, which details that in the last few days, we've been allocated an additional 362,000 by government, and this is going to be added to the contingency, increasing it to 8.6. Since the formation of this council, we've delivered savings of 76 million with a remit of maintaining services. This budget continues to deliver that remit. By not taking the full council tax increase available, it begins to address the position that Dorset residents will no longer be paying the third highest level of council tax in England, something that I've been conscious of from day one. Turn to a medium-term financial position, and there was a piece in here originally about second homes, and I've taken that out because it would be very difficult for some of us to leave the chamber at this point. This is a 5-year position based on acceptance of this budget. It's an improved position from a year ago. It gives us a real chance to address our issues in the future. So obviously there's now a piece missing, but it's not, will come to Cabinet at a later stage. Overall, Most of the income-raising opportunities still mean that Dorset residents pay the bill. However, we continue to lobby, not for sums of money from government, but a real change in the way in which funding for rural authorities with ageing populations is calculated. Until that changes, Dorset will remain underfunded in real terms. Our council taxpayers will shoulder that burden. It is our duty to do what we can to keep that burden as reasonable and controlled as possible. So I now move the recommendations set on pages 1 and 2 and number 1 to 13. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Suttle. I'm just going to ask Jonathan Mayer to clarify. Well, actually, he suggested that he clarified a couple of the statements you made. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had several references already this evening to the flexibility in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill to raise additional council tax and a premium on what are called dwellings occupied periodically, second homes. There is no proposal in the budget before you this evening in relation to that. There will be a proposal going to Cabinet on the 28th of February in relation to a premium, and that would come forward to this council at the end of March if the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill has by then been enacted in Parliament. But there is no proposal before you this evening, and a balanced budget this evening does not depend upon a premium on dwellings occupied periodically. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Suttle has proposed the recommendations, and I understand that Councillor Flower would like to second them.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to second the recommendations and reserve the right to come back at the end of the debate.
Thank you very much. So I'd now like to invite the group leaders to make their budget speeches, starting with Councillor Nick Ireland.
Councillor Nick Ireland, representing Crossways and Democrat Group. I will stick to 5 minutes, unlike Councillor Suttle. I've only got 3 pages. But I do note that many of the things I'm going to say, you've already said. So yeah, you've obviously been cribbing my notes. As I normally do in preparation for this meeting, I look back on the previous responses to the proposed budget of the day over the last few years, and the theme that stands out to me, despite my various efforts to phrase the same thing in a different way, is that the burden of providing the services to our residents and the inequity of having to support a significantly skewed demographic falls vastly on the resident population of our area, as Councillor Suttle has already said. There is, of course, an argument that this is genuine local government, where we all pay for what we receive. But it isn't, because what we do pay is via our council tax bills, the system which replaced Thatcher's poll tax and which is increasingly regressive with regard to property values, again, Councillor Suttle mentioned that, and takes little account of ability to pay and is widely regarded as fundamentally unfair. This budget, for a change, doesn't take the maximum council tax increase possible, a move presumably designed and acknowledged to try and move Dorset Council down from the 3rd highest council tax in the country to maybe somewhere in the lower top 10. But it has consequences in both permanently reducing the funding available to this council until it ceases to exist, so forever, and it possibly impacting on the success of future funding bids to central government. It also fails to match inflation, with most estimates of UK inflation for the remainder of 2023 and early 2024 averaging out about 6%. And because of the nature of council tax, the benefit of this decision isn't targeted by any means to all those in most of need. Other councils in England have proposed taking the maximum possible and then being creative in taking and redistributing, acknowledging both the system's failures and the diverse needs of their populations. It is regrettable that this administration didn't propose to do similar, but here we are, relying on our long-suffering residents and the phase-of-the-moon-dependent government handouts. I hope that all members of this council have read the Forgotten Towns Treatise, which was published last year, highlighting the preventable decline of Weymouth and Portland over the last 30 years, with the shocking statistics, among others, relating to social mobility and how far below the national average wage the area is, with the associated deprivation that brings. The cry we hear from Dorset Council is that we don't get enough funding for government, as Councillor Siddle has just said, and yet nothing much changes. The RSG is still absent, and much of what we do receive involves this council investing considerable time and expense to take part in the current bidding system, where London-based civil servants decide how and where regional money is spent. Most agree that the bidding system is no longer fit for purpose, but we did at least receive notification of £19 million in levelling up funding for Weymouth recently. £19 million, which you'd like to think will be spent constructively, but in reality, much will go on necessary harbour repairs, which previous administrations have failed to carry out due to the failure to reinvest harbour profits, and literally destructively to demolish buildings on our own land, which we own in the forlorn hope that it will attract capitalist investment rather than us seizing the opportunity to make a difference to our residents and developing it ourselves. The ghost of Charles Street truly has risen. And in case you missed it, the funding is just for Weymouth, not Portland. When you take Weymouth out of the equation, Portland's statistics are even worse, yet it receives nothing. So we're left, as usual, with a government that not only quartains our doctors and nurses, but also its own Tory administrations. This budget fails to acknowledge or address the damage caused by Trussonomics and turns a blind eye to the demographic time bomb of social care in Dorset, perhaps because the current administration won't be in power when it explodes.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. I'd like to ask Councillor Claire Sutton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Claire Sutton, Rodwell and Wyke Ward, leader of the Green Group. When Dorset Council was formed in 2019, we were told that our immediate ambition was to be safe and legal. That limited ambition, with the addition of action on the climate and ecological emergency, seemed reasonable in those early days. And since then, we've been buffeted by the COVID pandemic, a range of other budgetary pressures, including in adult social care, and now the inflation crisis. In this context, with gross expenditure set to increase by 8.5% within this budget to enable us to basically carry on doing what we've done this past year, with no projected cuts to frontline services and a large contingency fund to mitigate against inflationary pressures, this is another safe and legal budget. And we'll vote for it, because that's the responsible thing to do. However, whilst thanking officers and members for all their hard work on this, we do feel this budget lacks ambition. 3 areas where there is some agreement across this chamber are, first, the recognition, which has come through strongly in scrutiny this year, that we must do much better on housing to keep our young children and essential workers in the county. Second, the need to reverse the ongoing decline of public transport, especially in rural areas, to improve mobility of younger, poorer and elderly residents. And third, that we should be expediting a more commercial approach to our surplus assets to resource greater ambition in these and other areas, for example, youth services. In Weymouth and Portland alone, 6 youth clubs have closed since the swingeing cuts implemented by our predecessor council, and I'm disappointed that the youth fund within this budget has been frozen at £100,000. Significant improvements to housing and public transport would require significant resources, but to contemplate the reintroduction of social housing, council housing, and, as Councillor Bryan has suggested, running our own public transport, we'd expect to see in this budget at least some modest funding for capacity building, but it's not there. In relation to climate mitigation, we invested in staff to work out how to do it. prior to securing substantial funds to get on with it. And we'd like to see the same with social housing and public transport. So, whilst we will support this budget, we think this council can do better than safe and legal and should now be making preparations to tackle some of our more entrenched issues. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. So I now call Councillor Rob Hughes, please.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you very much. Rob Hughes, Ward Member for the Isle and Royal Manor of Portland, to give it its full title. Vice Chair of the Independent Group. I won't take too long this evening, but I would like, speaking on behalf of the Independent Group, to say that we are happy to accept this budget as proposed. I take this opportunity to thank Councillor Suttle and his team of officers, along with other Cabinet members and their teams also, who have also worked hard over the past months to bring in this budget at a rate of just under 4% for the year. The two budget cafes did an excellent job of informing members of the issues faced by the Council going forward, as well as the cost savings already made since the Council was formed in 2019. Thank you also to the members of the two scrutiny committees for your time and careful consideration of the budget. I'm sure it cannot have been easy for those involved to keep our costs down in these challenging times for people across the whole county, whilst maintaining a high level of service for all our residents and communities within Dorset for the year ahead, within a balanced budget. So thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think before we go into general comments, I think we'll go back to Councillor Ireland to propose his amendment, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I'm not going to read out the preamble and the background as written. I trust you've all read it yourselves. The current cost of living crisis is the culmination of many things. You can argue the toss over 12 years of Tory maladministration, the failure to invest sufficiently in renewables, having no real energy security policy, the war in Ukraine. I could go on. But regardless of these, the fact is it's real and it's hurting pretty much everyone. I well remember the panic and sense of helplessness I felt back in 1989 when my wife and I, 6 months after we bought a flat in London, basically were faced with mortgage rates of 16% and couldn't pay our instalments. And there are many residents out there right now in a far worse situation, forced to pay a poverty premium because they've been forced onto prepayment meters, having to choose between heating their homes or feeding their children. Why have we been reduced to this? We are supposed to be the 5th richest country in the world, and I checked it, and we apparently are. This budget chooses to increase council tax by 4%. I've given my views on that already, but those who are the most deprived, the worse off, the really, really struggling, won't get the benefit of not increasing to 5%. They get 100% council tax relief anyway this year. What they do need is targeted help, and I trust my fellow Dorset councillors can agree to support that outcome by voting for the amendment I proposed to give our officers, who are best placed to understand and identify what's needed and by whom to receive it, an additional tool to make genuine difference to those who most definitely need it. So I propose the amendment, which is on the screen now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. And I understand Councillor Taylor would like to second this.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to second the amendment, please. And could I speak to the amendment at the end of the debate, please?
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. So we will now speak to the amendment, please. Yes, Councillor Laura Beddoe-Miller, or Miller-Beddoe, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm relaxed about what you call me. Beddoe is fine. Thank you. Slightly surprised at this amendment for £500,000. We have already been doing that work. I don't think £500,000 goes far enough. We're proposing £2 million. That's more. There is... It is. There is also a point about the council tax increase in the main budget paper. And I think that the Leader of the Opposition is suggesting that we actually take more council tax than proposed. No? Okay. Not in the amendment, sorry, in your budget speech. You did say you thought it would be better to take the full amount. You didn't. Okay. In that case, I apologise. I must have misheard. But speaking solely to the amendment then, as we've already covered, some weeks ago, 6-7 weeks ago, Spencer asked me to work with officers, and I'd like to pay tribute to Laura Cornett and her team, because on top of their normal workload, they have done a huge amount of work on this. Of course, we already had the cost of living support group. We were already doing these things. We were already supporting those people who absolutely need this support. And so with the proposal for the additional £2 million, we were able to target that really quite quickly. No, it wasn't part of the budget proposals. It wasn't discussed in the budget cafe. It would have been nice to see the Leader of the Opposition in any of the budget cafe sessions, or indeed the budget scrutiny sessions. Because no, I have to say the rest of the group made considered, valuable input, which was taken on board. We've had some great compliments from members of all of the opposition groups, and I thank them for it, because that's how you prepare important stuff, is by doing it together. So no, we didn't discuss it there. We're bringing it to Cabinet. The Leader of the Opposition has himself just said that the officers know where the help needs to go. They do, and we're working with them really closely to propose that so that we get the help out to where it's needed the most. As I mentioned earlier on in the questions, this isn't just about throwing a number up into the air and hoping that some of it sticks in the right places. This is about getting it to the people that really need it. It's about leaving some legacy work. So I mentioned Healthy Homes Dorset. That's just one example. If we can insulate those properties properly and help those people, that's not just this year, that's for the rest of the life of that house, or as long as the insulation lasts until technology takes it over. And so I feel quite strongly that we need to be doing that. I feel that a lot of what's been said is relevant more to central government than to the work that Dorset Council has been doing. And with this amendment, I will, unsurprisingly, not be supporting it. It doesn't go far enough. And quite honestly, it feels like a bit of a publicity stunt that's an insult to the people that need our help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Somper.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Jane Somper, Beacon Ward. I do appreciate and respect the thought behind this amendment, though it does not, well, to me anyway, demonstrate any understanding of the targeted work that Councillor Beddoe, along with the officers, have been putting into place for our most vulnerable residents through the many grants that have and will continue to be available for specific projects. And Madam Chairman, I do not choose to be parochial, though I have witnessed firsthand the significant positive influence some of these grants have had in my own ward. And I'd like to highlight the Warm Hub that has been set up, operated, planned, and continues to expand its reach to the maturer residents and to families with young children, not only in the village of Fontmell Magna, where the village hall hosts a weekly space by its very hard-working group of volunteers, but also into the wider area of our surrounding villages, where an open invitation to attend has been extended. Residents are coming from a wide geographical area in the Beacon Ward to enjoy warmth, the home-cooked food, which is delicious, and the opportunity to talk to social prescribers from the local group practice and representatives from the Citizens Advice Bureau. This is addressing many types of care and support, including what is defined as rural isolation, and confirms that Councillor Beddoes' approach is working. Yes, I agree that more should be done and increased funding put into the pot, and that is why the leader has announced an additional £2 million to continue to strengthen this form of targeted evidenced work, and therefore I will not be supporting this amendment. As Councillor Beddoes said, it does not go far enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Somper. Next up, we have Councillor Jesperson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillforts and Upper Clarence Ward. I'm sure that everyone in this chamber would support the sentiment behind this amendment. Unallocated reserves could be described as rainy day money, and a world pandemic and a war in Europe leading to very high inflation hitting household bills, that's surely a rainy day for the citizens of Dorset. But this proposal, it seems to me, is really rendered redundant in the light of the much more generous proposal that we've already been discussing, that we're hearing about. The proposal that we've heard from the leader and from Councillor Beddoes has been worked up over the last 7 weeks with the support of Councillor Beddoes and officers. It has the support of the Section 151 officer. It's costed, it can be afforded, it builds on all the good work that's already been done, and importantly, it can be rolled out to those who need it most really swiftly. So I would suggest that we all get behind this much more generous scheme for a £2 million fund, which will be sufficient to make a real difference to the lives of our residents. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jesperson. Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Paul Kimber, Isle of Portland, Royal Manor, and I'll also tag another one because it's been a little bit overlooked tonight, and Labour Party. I will be supporting this tonight, this amendment. I've seen the good that our own town council has done with a few bob. We've been able to support very much the initiatives that have been in your ward, having a community fridge, having a warm hub, taking care and bringing the whole food down. And lastly but not least, a breakfast club. This has been commended by the surrounding schools of Portland, from All Saints to all our schools that give kids just a small few bob for a breakfast during the summer holidays, which they won't normally get. We've got a big responsibility tonight, and I believe this is well worth supporting to look at this whole area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Louis O'Leary, Littlemore and Preston Ward. Apart from Councillor Kimber, Hughes and Cockins and Councillor Orrell, my ward rests as the third most deprived. I have the unique experience of having set up a food bank and running a food bank previously. In my own ward, Dorset Council has supported the setup of the Nest Shop project. It's given grant to the community centre, which provided things such as the food bank, which is now at the church, and warm hubs. I applaud the work being done by the leader and by Councillor Miller/Beddoes. I don't know what to say. And I could think that that is what is genuinely needed. I do struggle, though, with these budget debates because last year, Councillor Ireland came here with his little groundhog pig, or whatever it was, the little toy on the front desk, moaning about the constant pressure we put on our residents in regards to council tax. And then this year he comes here and seems to sing a different story. I never know which way he's going to go. He talks of 12 years of Tory misrule. He forgets it for 5 of those years he was in coalition his party was in coalition with the Conservatives. So therefore, I do find it confusing, some of the stuff he comes out with. I find it even more confusing how much I do agree with the leader of the Green Group, and I'm glad she didn't put forward an amendment based on council housing, because it'd been a bit like the temptation of Christ by the devil. I would have been tempted to vote for it. However, I will not be voting for this amendment, because once again, as I will reiterate the comments of my colleagues, it doesn't go far enough. And in regards to Councillor Suttle's budget, he's gone through a lengthy process of consultation, and I reiterate, it can't be nice if the Leader of the Opposition did attend some of those. His colleagues did, and there's a number of colleagues on his benches that behaved very good in that consultation, brought forward a lot of ideas. We had a very good People in Health Scrutiny that was wonderfully chaired by Councillor Taylor and Councillor Rennie, where we had a good debate. And I really think that I am disappointed in his constant politicking, especially considering he's probably up for election for the general election next year.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. To be frank, I don't really like the tone of this very much. Like Councillor Ireland, I have a day job as well, which means I'm not able to attend all the meetings, so I attend everyone I possibly can, that's for sure. But luckily for me, I have a redoubtable deputy here, Brian, who attends absolutely everything. And Brian reliably informs me, so correct me if I'm wrong, that this is absolutely the first that we've heard about this 2 million, you know, and that's really, really welcome. I mean, it's fantastically welcome, but it given, you know, that there's an amendment in here, I have to say this, and I know you'll probably all boo me, but it does smack a little bit of game playing that this is the first we've heard about it. So what I would say, I mean, the announcement is incredibly welcome, Spencer and Laura. You know, it's really incredibly welcome. But it hasn't been agreed yet. You know, we've been told about it, but it hasn't gone to Cabinet yet. It hasn't been agreed. I'm sure you'll say it will be agreed. So why can't we come together and actually support the amendment and then say thank you very much that it's going to be even better? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, why were we, most of us, not aware of this, the initiative that Laura Beddoes' group were doing with officers, and I'm sure they're doing lots of work, but I'm astounded. I attended all of the budget cafes, and I can tell you it didn't come up at all. And therefore, this amendment was brought forward in good faith by us, by Nick, and I think that actually having no knowledge of what was going on, you know, by Laura's group, well, what would we do? And we are being modest, but let's face it, why don't we have 2.5 million? Yeah. And therefore back this amendment. So thank you very much. I back the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ezard. We have Councillor Bartlett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My point's have already been made. Thank you, so I won't waste the Chamber's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rennie.
Thank you. Yes, the first we'd heard of it. The people who are Councillor Rennie, daughter to South, and Vice Chairman of People in Health Scrutiny. And thank you, praise indeed, Councillor O'Leary, thank you. Many people who are putting this forward were at our scrutiny meeting, and everybody who was there knows how hard it was and how difficult it was for us to actually scrutinise and bring proposals forward. The budget, the feeling we had and what is told to us is the reserves are sacrosanct. We knew we were working within a 4% increase in council tax. We know what the situation is out there. The people in health scrutiny would have brought forward so many more ideas which would have come within this 2 million. And I would love this 2 million. but I'd like 2.5 even more. And I think that this is the way we should go forward. It's not grandstanding. As Councillor Izzard said, this is the first we've heard about this. Councillor Meadows said, we've been working on this for 7 weeks. The budget cafes and the scrutiny meetings were held during that period. When people were at our meetings, scrutiny meetings, they would have seen how hard and how difficult it was for everybody to try to not increase the council tax, to deliver something like that. And not one person told us there is a way forward. So thank you. I hope you would support the amendment and get 2.5 million for all those people out there. It's all right hearing about warm spaces and meals being cooked. Everybody in this room's doing that and already doing it. We can do a lot more with 2.5 million.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor Legg, Robin Legg. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Robin Legg, Sherborne Rural. This is almost a question for Aidan Dunn, and I hope it's not going to embarrass you by just suddenly plunging in with a question. Obviously, the mechanism of producing a £2 million amount of money in order to help people who are desperately in need has been run past you, and you say, we can do that. My understanding of Nick's amendment is the fact that that's also been run past you because it had to be, and you looked at it and said, yes, you can do that, it's legal. The question then is, if we took the mechanism that's being used by Spencer to produce a £2 million fund, could we actually produce a £2.5 million fund? Would that be within the realms of possibility? Because several members on the Chamber have said this evening that in principle, they like the idea of helping people and they like the idea of producing as much funding as possible, legally possible. Could we therefore have a £2.5 million fund legally?
Thank you, Councillor Legg. Personally, I can't answer that one. So I think Councillor Flower wanted to...
I would. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll do my best. Read the forward plan. Look at the Cabinet forward plan. It's been in that forward plan since the end of January. And what I did, I went to Aidan and I said, look, I went somewhere just before Christmas and I saw things I didn't like. I saw young families using food banks who couldn't afford to get their prepaid meters topped up. And I thought, you know what? I don't like that. And what can we do as a council to make life better for people that are in that situation? So I started the ball rolling to have a look at that. My question was, we got some unallocated reserves. Can we put, I asked her, can we put a couple of £1 million aside for this? And the answer was yes. I waved this around earlier. A 29-page report doesn't take 2 minutes to write. Brian, who's an ex-civil servant, will know that. It is a process. A lot of work's gone into this, because if we're going to put that money out into the community, it has to be done the right way. It has to target the right people. Not just some money you pull out of the air and, oh, well, we'll spend it here, there and everywhere. No, it's got to be done properly. So to say you didn't know isn't true. Read the forward plan, because it was in there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Jill Taylor.
Councillor Jill Taylor, is she coming back at the end of the debate?
I believe so. Councillor Taylor, are you coming back in now for your 3 minutes?
Amendment with all of this in mind as the seconder.
Sorry, this is an amendment and you can't amend an amendment. I'm very sorry, Councillor Taylor. I'll ask Jonathan Mayor to explain.
Chairman, thank you. I anticipated that this might come up during the debate. So any proposal to amend the budget has to be on notice, and that's the procedure that Councillor Ireland has followed, putting in an amendment on notice ahead of this meeting. And so I'm afraid it's a very binary decision for you tonight. You either support that amendment or you oppose the amendment. There isn't an option to amend the amendment tonight because any amendment to the budget has to be on notice, and you've had notice of one amendment. There isn't any other amendment of which the council has been given notice.
Thank you, Jonathan. So there was somebody over. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Councillor Christopher, thank you.
Before we go to the vote, I'd like to make a few points following on from the comments of Councillor Ireland. I was very saddened to hear that he suffered from 16% interest rates in 1989. I remember high interest rates in the early 90s. I must admit, I've met many top economists in my time. I've met Eddie George. I've met Charlie Bean, the Deputy Governor, etc. One person I haven't met, and I probably never will, is Jay Powell. Jay Powell, the head of the Fed, the Federal Reserve. Even the Federal Reserve can't agree what's going to happen with interest rates. Jay Powell has said we can't say that interest rates and inflation have peaked. And I think Gary Suttle's done a remarkably good job. What I would say about this Conservative group of councillors is that they're doing remarkably good work.
Excuse me, Councillor Christopher. You are speaking to the amendment. Would you like to just put your case, please?
Because the work is being done by individual councillors, and you've all had the appropriate explanation from the hard-working leader of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. So, Councillor Lacey Clark, I believe, would like to.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Lacey Clark from Blandford Fulham Ward, which I co-host with the wonderful Councillor Byron Quayle. I just want to slightly correct, I think the whole chamber has done a fantastic job in bringing together this budget between us at all of the cabinet, all of the cafes and everything we've worked upon. We've all done our political statements. We've had our back and forth fun. It's Valentine's Day. We all know how we feel on this. Can we move to the vote and just kind of move this along? Everyone said all the pertinent points.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey Clark. So I'm coming back to Councillor Taylor to have your say from your seconding of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to second this vote, this amendment, and to talk to it. I find it really sad in this chamber. I find it sad because we didn't know about this cost of living paper. It didn't come onto the forward plan until the 31st of January, and then all we have is a title. We have no information. We have said time and time again on scrutiny, we need more information about these papers, and we're not given that. Additionally, I'm on the phone. If somebody had picked the phone up to me, I would have been open to discussions on this. But nobody did pick up the phone. And while I very much appreciate and applaud the £2 million, I'm just wondering where it came from and why we haven't been allowed to discuss that during the budget setting process. I think it's really important that we do vote for this tonight for one simple reason. I was elected in 2019 to represent my residents, as all of us were. Each and every one of us has deprived areas in our wards. Each and every one of us have residents who could benefit and benefit greatly from this. So the question is actually quite simple. Do we want to leave this to the Cabinet to take the glory for this, if that is the right word? Or would we want to actually say from this whole council that we are actually behind our residents? We as a whole council have put politics to one side and want to support all of our residents. By leaving this to Cabinet, all we're doing basically is pushing it into the long grass in a way, because there's no funding with it until the Cabinet makes up its mind. So I'm told that I can't amend it, which is okay, fair enough. But can we put in £500,000 now and have a budget line that is secure and we know will not change, that comes from this committee, from this full council, with the support of all the members here? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Suttle has a right of reply here. I don't know if you'd like to use it to explain where the two amounts might be coming from.
Well, I don't know about that, but I would like to say a few words just at the end, and I'll come to the budget amendment, obviously. I think that having listened to opposition leader and also to Councillor Sutton, how close actually we all are in agreement. A lot of the things you're talking about are government funding. A lot of them are capital items, which we may be able to bring on. And of course, when Councillor Ireland and I wrote the speech together, what I didn't know was when he said, it's okay, it's all done, leave it to me, he'd write this extra bit in. But he didn't mention it until the very last minute. The work that's been done on this to create a fund of £2 million, as the leader has said, has led to a 27-page document, has been supported by Councillor Beddoe. I think I sort of agree with you that it's unfortunate we couldn't have got it into the budget process at the time, but it wasn't ready. That's the problem. In future, I think that things like this do need to go into the budget process. I'm going to be absolutely frank about that. But in this occasion, this amendment is proposing a quarter of what we can give to the most residents who need it the most. And whilst I agree with the sentiment, I want to give them more. And this will go through Cabinet, I'm sure. And at that time, we can argue whether it's 2 million or 2.5 million or whatever that figure is. And as the leader has said, this money will go as directed to the people who need it most. So I can't support the amendment, but I'm looking forward to speaking at Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle. We are now going to the vote. I think we've had a good airing on the amendment. I hope you've all got your devices. Thank you.
The vote is now open. Councillor Quayle, could you cast your vote again for me, please? Councillor Rowe, could you cast your vote again for me, please? Yeah. One more time, Councillor Rowe. We just haven't got your vote to come in. Thank you. Thank you. The vote's now closed. The results of the vote are those in favour, 30, those against, 43, no abstentions. The amendment is lost.
Thank you very much. So we now return to debate the original budget recommendations, please. Obviously, sorry, Councillor Suttle has put forward this proposal, which has been duly seconded. Is there anyone that would like to speak for the original proposal? Excuse me. Councillor sorry. No, we've got Councillor Bartlett's first. Thank you. I've got the wrong glasses on.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ward member for Wimborne Minster, a very lovely town, as are others in Dorset. I'm sure my colleague will have something to say about that. Councillor Andrews, your discretion, Madam Chairman, to let him speak or not, but I would like to inform your decision on that. I'd just like to take members back to the 2019 meeting that we had as a Shadow Council Authority, in which the vast majority of members in this chamber were in that meeting. Brief intermission. That's right. Okay. Madam Chairman, in that Shadow Council meeting, there was a motion that was put on the table about cross-party working and cross-party arrangement and developing a civilised chamber. I don't like clapping and cheering in the chamber. We're bigger and better than that, I feel. But we made a vote for cross-party working. Now, on that night in the chamber, there was well over 100 councillors. And I say the vast majority of the members in this room were in that chamber on that night at Southwark's House. And the voting was 1 abstention, 1 against, and everybody else has voted to work across party. Now, we're a council authority that, from its infancy, when we started in 2019, to where we are today, we have a very civilised chamber. We work together, we get around the table, where we have a meeting of minds, we work together. Where we don't, there is constructive challenge. Now, it was asked earlier whether or not the leader does a good job or not. On the whole, I'd say he does. But it's known across this chamber that the leader and I have quite a special relationship, which was born out from our days in East Dorset District Council, when we were both leaders in our respective groups. And that was built on basically on a mutual understanding and a trust in one another. The leader would be the first to tell you that I do phone him up and tell him he's getting it wrong. Not on a regular basis, but I do phone him up and tell him he's getting it wrong. And does he listen? Yes, he does. Does he agree with me? No, he doesn't. And do we have a conversation then to see whether we can have a meeting of minds? Yes, we do. And various cabinet members have had the same conversation with me. I phone them up and I tell them you're doing it wrong. And we have that same conversation. And that's mature politics. That's a mature approach to local government. So my place in resources scrutiny meeting, Madam Chairman, all 5.5 hours of it. And I've got a few thank yous to do, if you could just bear with me. Aidan Dunn and Miss Lapping and the rest of the finance team, I'd like to thank them. Aidan actually left the meeting smiling, and I'm not sure if that was through nervous exhaustion or just relief that he actually got out of the room. I'd also like to thank the portfolio holders and the officers for their presentations and the time that they gave, and the leader, who I kept at the top table so I could keep an eye on him. I'd like to thank for his input for being in that meeting as well. And also my grateful thanks to the committee members for their due diligence in taking this budget apart. Now, the reason I've said that, Madam Chairman, is because there was 18 recommendations made to Cabinet. The Scrutiny Committee could find no good reason to throw that budget out. There was assumptions in it, and I'll come to that in a minute as to why those assumptions were in it. But when we actually took that budget on and had a look at it, there was not sufficient evidence within that budget to say that it was a risk to this council authority and we weren't going to provide frontline services to our residents, which is the most important thing. Because at the forefront of all of this is what we provide as a council authority to our residents. That's the most important thing. I'd also like to thank Councillor Suttle for the time he spent with me in preparing for that budget meeting. I'm extremely grateful to him. Now, Councillor Suttle and I have a similar understanding. We're on the same page, although we call it differently, and that is about this council authority and its future funding from government and how that needs to be done. So I think Councillor Suttle calls it an algorithm, where I think I tend to call it a forward funding formula, but I think basically we're on the same page. So we know that a rural council authority and a county that for decades has sleepwalked into a position where it's a retirement county, and now we're literally paying the cost for that now, that through no fault of this council authority or the members in this chamber, because this has gone on for decades, but now we need to address that. And we know that our residents are paying a disproportionate high council tax to accommodate that £140 million adult social care bill that comes to this council authority. We know that government should be funding social adult care from central government. They should be redistributing those taxes back across the area of the country where it's needed. So, Madam Chairman, there was three major recommendations at the end of the council. Forgive me, I've got long COVID, so it gets, if I talk too much, it gets to be a bit of a struggle, which you must all be very happy about. The first one, the financial settlement, which obviously needs to come in October. It's ridiculous to be in a position we were in with a finance team having to struggle through that Christmas period and New Year period to try and formulate the budget, the final details of it, because that financial settlement came in so late from government. The next one was the 3 to 5 year financial settlement. The remainder, that needs to be in place so that we can do the strategic thinking. You wouldn't run a business on a year-on-year financial statement the way, like we do. So that needs to be a much more strategic approach to that. Now, I know the leader has taken those arguments along with his cabinet to government, and I hope that the security and scrutiny decision behind that, supporting that, gives them a greater strength in that argument in, in central government. The last point I wish to make, and that is that this budget I will be supporting. And the reason I'm supporting it is because it does actually do what it says on the tin, I believe. I don't think there's sufficient risk within this budget to say that we're not going to deliver the service to residents. But the most important thing is the 24-25 budget. That's critical. If we get to 27-28 on the medium-term financial plan, and I know the leader will say that he's got a plan in order not to get to where we could be in 27-28, but that's full of assumptions as well, leader, with the greatest respect. But in 27-28, this council authority could be in excess of £30 million back in the red, which we would be back where we started. So all of you that were in district councils and borough councils, if you had the good fortune to serve on those, when we came together, all the money from those was poured in to bail out a county council that, through no fault of its own really, was finding itself at that time at £30 million in the red because of the adult and children's services costs that it had. So, Madam Chairman, the 24-25 budget is going to be critical. We know the political atmosphere out there. We know that we can't predict what the election is going to be in 24. We're all going to be on tender hooks. And no doubt, when we get up to sort of 2-3 months before that election, then we'll have our bun fight. And then I hope afterwards we can return back to a civilised chamber and get back around the table again. But I asked, my committee asked, within that 24-25 budget, to build up to it, that cross-party working groups are set up in the directorates to work with portfolio holders and directors and officers to formulate budget proposals that will be fed into the budget cafes and develop the budget for 24-25, and for group leaders to get around the table and discuss how they can bring that forward. I'm aware the portfolio holder for finance wishes to have further discussions with me, and I'd welcome that. And Madam Chairman, for all of those reasons I've said, I really do implore the members to support this budget tonight, so that we can get it done and finished with, and we can get around the table as a group of councillors, so that when we get to 24-25 budget proposal, the entire chamber will have ownership of that for when we go into it. Madam Chairman, that's what I'd like to see happen, and thank you for your indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bartlett. Very interesting. I'm now going to ask Councillor Kimber to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul Kimber, Isle of Portland, and Labour. I'm tonight speaking with this budget. I have a heavy heart. Earlier on this year, and my colleague in the Lib Dems mentioned it, we had this document given to us, Forgotten Towns. And I do ask you, have a look at this document, take it back. It took some academics in the Bournemouth University quite 2 years to write. I know that we can at times us as a council can say, yes, we know better, or we must do it this way. But I do say to you, take this in and have a look. I want to start, first of all, by thanking our great staff, from the cleaners right the way through to our chief executive. If that could be passed on, I would be grateful, because these are the forgotten people that do the work, make sure that we've got a lovely building fit for the public coming into. I, with a heavy heart tonight, will not be supporting the budget because of this heavy hound. I want to take you back to a bit of history, and I know Councillor Tony Ferrari had to deliver the fact that we didn't get the £300 million grant. This was very disappointing to us on Portland, because we had, as you might all know, we had one of our underground mines all ready to go that could have provided a lot of jobs, a lot of inward investment, and brought a little bit of prosperity in the area. We've spoken tonight about the deprivation, so I won't go too far on that, but I obviously welcome the 2 million coming into communities. But this is what I do believe that I've stand before you. I want to turn a little bit to housing, and I'm a little bit concerned that I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we only had £4 million to deal with housing. I make no bones about it. I would like to see us think about council housing, whether we start off small or go on for the future. I would like us to see us go back to what I call real housing. So with that point, I'll carry on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimber. Very interesting statements you got there. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. All these socialists need to stop tempting me with council housing. Croydon, Thurrock, going bankrupt. Almost every council is putting its council tax up by the maximum amount. I'm going to do something quite novel and say congratulations, Gary, on your hard work and keeping this down. Not novel amongst my own group, I must add, and Councillor Bartlett and others, but well done for keeping the council tax down. There's a number of problems facing all of us, both this council, national government, and people in their individual lives. This budget doesn't put it up by the maximum, which is what a number of us have been asking for years and years and years. It challenges that orthodoxy that Dorset must be the one or two of the highest council tax authorities in the council. I stood here last year and said that must be our long-term goal of reducing the burden, and I thank Councillor Suttle for doing that and putting that on the right track. I must also thank him because I received a Valentine's card from him, and I know it's from him because all the hearts in it were bleeding, because I know how passionate he is for us in the well-being of our residents, so I thank him very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary, for giving us a minute's laughter. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start briefly with the Forgotten Towns report that Paul mentions? It's hard to imagine a more inappropriately titled report. I always thought it was a fairly unuseful desk piece of research by an academic from Bournemouth with no real grasp of what was actually happening in the town. And then the government gives us 19 million quid to level it up. So it's hard to imagine that levelling up's an appropriate description of the town now. We don't need people talking the town down, Paul. We need people to talk about what a great place it is. We don't need naysayers. The more substantive piece is about Councillor Ireland's comments, though, because he spent his time talking down Weymouth again, saying the 19 million quid levelling up that we've got is not going to do anything, is going to fix the harbour wall. Well, it isn't going to fix the harbour walls, and the main reason it's not going to fix the harbour walls is that the government's already given us commitment to £100 million to fix the harbour walls in Weymouth. So we don't need the 19 million to fix that. And he didn't mention the £4 million of Shared Prosperity Fund that we just got from central government. Now, Shared Prosperity Fund is replacement for EU regional funding, which Dorset never used to get any of anyway. So we've now got £4 million of Shared Prosperity Fund coming into Dorset that we wouldn't have had before. And he didn't mention the Rural Prosperity Fund, which is another replacement of EU funding that's probably going to get us a couple of million. We've got a bid in for that recently. He didn't mention the decarbonisation, £19 million, 25 buildings in Weymouth. There's about 200 and some across the county, many of them schools who got funding. I suspect that Dorset got more central government funding per head of population than any other local authority in the country. And Councillor Ireland wants to mock it. I think he's on the wrong page. He creates an image of hard-pressed residents. I share a ward with Councillor O'Leary, little more areas of deprivation. That's all been described before. But Councillor Ireland knows best. He doesn't think that we should charge 4% council tax and let the residents decide what they want to do with their money. He thinks we should charge them 5% because we know better how their money should be spent. This council's taken an admirable route of maintaining our services, winning enormous investment to enhance Dorset, and doing that within a budget in the lowest quartile of increase in the country. There was a BBC survey today, and 75% of councils with social care responsibility will be charging 5% council tax increase. We're at the very least in the bottom quartile, and we may be lower than that, depending where the shape is. I suspect almost every council in the country would love to have this budget, and I heartily recommend it to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferrari. I have one last speaker, Councillor Biggs, and then I'm going to ask Councillor Flower if he'd like to have his 3 minutes. Thank you.
Richard Biggs, Poundbury, Dorset Ward again. This budget has got many items to recommend it, and it has been through a quite extensive process. I'm not to say it's a perfect process, and I think there's some improvements for next year that could be worked on. But I suppose my observation is it's a bit of a gamble. It's based on some very tentative assumptions on inflation rates, on wages, which only need the slightest movement to put at risk. What we've got is a small contingency for inflation, which I can see if you read the reports from adults and children, you know, they're saying they are at serious risk of overspending. It's quite clear. And if you look at the quarter-3 reports that's out now, some of those budgets are moving in place. So it will work if those assumptions are kept and the transformation is delivered and all those things, you know, and it's no problem in trying to keep the tax to the minimum possible. But I think I'd rather, my personal view, I'd rather face electors and tell them that I supported putting the council tax up the maximum I could, which is only 1% more, and to not cut his services. And when people come here complaining about their potholes and the rest of it, I say, well, these things cost money. If we don't get the funds, we have no other means. And when we try and apply for funds in the future, the government will say, well, actually, you had the means to request, to preset more money, and you didn't do it. And I think that's, you know, it's a really tough call, isn't it? You know, I hope, because like all of us, we're trying to do best for our residents, that those assumptions fall in and inflation does really come down to 6%. It actually went up in America today, where they said, you know, the economy's going really well and they thought it was going to go down. That came as a surprise. If you see the headwinds with fuel and the rest of it, I don't think it's going to go down anywhere near. And we'll be in a hell of a position next year. And we raided for good, you know, our unallocated reserves for things without going through the proper discussion with the rest of council. So I'm personally, I feel I can't support the budget, but I really hope that we do meet those assumptions proved correct. But that's my personal view, and I know it's not shared with all my fellow colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. I'd now like to go over to Councillor Spencer-Flower, our leader, to give his final thoughts before we take the vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, my voice and I think the time we spent on this budget has determined me. I've made the decision. I'm going to reduce what I'm going to say on this, but I am going to comment on a couple of things, actually, because I heard one member say this budget was risk averse, and I got another member saying this budget's risky. There's a balance in that, and Gary's got and Aidan have got that balance. That's why this is a good budget. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. And I pick up on what Shane said earlier. Thank you very much, Shane. I think you've made some good points around what we're trying to achieve as a council. I really do. We should have an ambition to reduce the burden of taxation on the people of Dorset. And one of the things I've done repeatedly, and many of you in this chamber will appreciate that, is to lobby government for a better deal. We get a lousy deal in Dorset. We have done for decades. It doesn't matter about the colour of the government. The shires get a lousy deal. And one of the big things, and a recognition finally, is that we get no funding for rurality. The cost of delivering services in the rural area can be significantly higher than they are in an urban area. And there's no recognition of that in the standard funding formula, but there needs to be. And that's the piece of work all we can do, and we do this with the LGA, we do this individually as councils, is lobby government to get them to listen. Not always successful, I have to say, but there are occasions when they do, and I'm grateful for that. And there is no doubt, and I'm going to pick up on a couple of things here. I'm not going to, so Chairman, I'll conclude by confirming my full support for this budget, as per the recommendation set out in the report before us tonight. This will be a budget that enables this council to offer the best outcomes overall for the communities we serve, helping to establish a basis on which to take this council forward in a strong, financially sound and structured way, enabling us to fulfil our ambitions to serve the communities of Dorset well through transformation, and I didn't hear that earlier, about we need to tax people or we don't do things. You can transform and be more efficient. We've done that in spades in these coming up to 4 years now. What a huge difference we've made in harvesting £76 million of savings already. Many of us thought we might save 70 million in the first 5 years. I guess we're on track for 100. Don't knock it, we're doing a good job. All of us in this chamber, not just the administration. We're all working in this, in my judgment, in a way that gets the best outcomes of the people of Dorset. Shane refers to the shadow council. I referred to the first meeting of this council where I said in my acceptance speech that I'd like to think we could work across the chamber in a collaborative way. And we need to maintain that, in my judgment, because I believe you get better outcomes doing it that way. So, yeah, we remain bold and ambitious, but we must also make sure we maintain strong, structured and stable finances. This is the bedrock of being able to achieve our key priorities set out in the Dorset Plan and the Cabinet commitments. In other words, doing the everyday stuff well will always pay dividends. This is surely the foundation on which we can build for the present and the future of Dorset Council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. I'm going to give Councillor Suttle the last opportunity for the last word, if you'd like to take it.
Thank you, Chair. I think what I'd like to say is that this is our budget, all of our budget, because we represent all of the people collectively, no matter what party you are. I very much appreciate Councillor Bartlett's comments regarding how we may approach the budget in the coming year. I believe that we can do positive things together, not as one party, and we can still have budget cafe days, we can still have lots of information, but we can collaborate more. And I look forward to the process that we can agree to do that. Some people have said about risk and about assumptions, but if you don't make assumptions, you don't make a budget. I've tried to make budget assumptions based on facts and what we believe will happen. I've said that inflation is a risk. We all know that. But this budget that we put together, all of us, I believe is sound. Bear in mind, last year we brought in a budget virtually on the penny, and I'm going to do our absolute utmost to do the same again. Because if we do that, it gives us the freedom to do greater things in the future. So I commend the budget to you, and I hope that as many of you as can will feel that you can support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle. We will now take the vote, please.
The vote is now open. There are just a few more votes to come in if you haven't voted. Councillor Denseath, could you vote for me again, please? We haven't received it. Councillor Ferrari, would you mind pressing your button again, please? Thank you. 43. And Councillor Robin Legg, would you mind pressing your vote again, please? We haven't received it. Councillor David Taylor, would you mind? We're just waiting for your vote, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. The vote's now closed. The results of the vote are those in favour, 59, those against, 11, and 2 abstentions. The budget is carried.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, everybody. I know it's taken a long time this evening, but actually we've been working on this budget for months and months, all of us, trying to do our best and input what we can. So it's been well worth it. Sorry? Sorry. Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chair. Point of order. I thought that on the budget we had to actually state individually that we had to make the decision. So we can't do it en bloc. We can't do it like just yes and no. You ought to do it as a separate person. It is recorded, is it? Oh, well, sorry. I thought...
Chairman, thank you. Before we had the handsets and the electronic voting arrangements, yes, we did used to carry out the budget vote as a roll call with members individually calling out how they were voting on the budget. The names of members and how they voted will be recorded in the minutes. It simply happens automatically in the background. Thank you.
Thank you. So we now move on to agenda item 10, the Community Governance Review. Do we? No.
Apologies, Chairman. I was just being cheeky and see if we got a 5-minute comfort break. So I see people are coming and going.
I think we'll just have to crack on, if you don't mind. Thank you. I accept where you're coming from, as they say, but I think we should move on. So I'm going to ask Councillor Flower to introduce the report and propose the recommendations of the Community Governance Review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My goodness, this has been a long process, hasn't it? I was looking back at this, and I was looking at some of the members of the working group when back in July last year, we agreed the bulk of the warding around Dorset, but we left Weymouth out and Chickerell and one group parish. There was a piece more work to do. I think that was a very wise move. Tonight, the recommendation is to go out to consult again. And at this late stage, you think it would only be on things like ward names and that sort of stuff, and maybe the odd tweak. But if there's anything, and I know that it's been difficult, we had a question this evening from a Weymouth town councillor, and I do appreciate it's been a bit of a challenge for the reasons I've expressed earlier. But we have to move on. And what I would say is, this is one further opportunity. If something really radically different to what we've already put in our recommendations comes forward, then I'm sure the working group, with the advice from Democratic Services, will have another look at it. But we are getting to the back end of the process now. But anyway, the recommendation actually is simply to go out to consult, not to make a decision in the final analysis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. I understand Councillor Peter Wolfe would like to second the recommendations.
Yes, please, Chairman. Thank you. I reserve the right to speak later. Thank you.
So, Councillor O'Leary.
In a very lengthy process. The leader did say this is only to go out to consultation. While I understand that, this is not something that I can support going out to consultation. To vote to put this out to consultation legitimises the plan given out in the option for Weymouth. This plan would give Littlemore 2 members of Parliament in a parish council ward, which is more than the Isle of Wight. It breaks Dorset Council boundaries, despite the fact he consistently says that it's part of their guidance not to do so. It gives the ward of Nottingham, which is in Councillor Dunseith and Worth's unitary ward, but in the Weymouth Town Council area, a ward of 177 voters currently, only to go up to 498 in 5 years' time, meaning that 3 candidates on a 30% turnout would need 18 votes to win that ward. While in Preston, it would be 2,100 people per councillor, with the last candidate in that ward winning it by 1,000. I cannot support sending a flawed option out to consultation because a flawed option will give flawed results. I am very encouraged, though, to hear the leader say that he will look at any new proposals if a plan comes forward that cuts the number of Weymouth councillors, as he has stated, and others of which they've stated they would like, keep parish wards within parliamentary constituency, achieves a better elector per councillor equity than this plan, and only cuts Dorset ward boundaries once or twice, which this proposal already cuts it once, and has the support of myself, Weymouth councillors, Weymouth Town Council, as I don't generally find myself in agreement with Councillor Taylor, Councillor Harris, Councillor Wakely and others, and I find it quite concerning sometimes that I have found so much agreement with them on some things. And has the main thing of ensuring it has the consent of the people of Littlemore, in my regards, in terms of our border on the north, and has the consent of the people of Weymouth and the other areas affected. Will he consider that plan as an alternative to the one he has set forward tonight, which I cannot support in all good conscience and all good faith as a representative of my residents?
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Leary. We move to Councillor Orrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Orrell from Melcombe Regis in Weymouth. I find myself very discomforted to be in agreement with Councillor O'Leary. If we put out this consultation to the public as it stands, we get rubbish in, rubbish out. There's more work needs to be done to get the boundaries right. This is kind of once in a generation opportunity. And the Weymouth town has grown over the years, and the way the boundaries are drawn at the moment doesn't reflect the natural communities. So more work needs to be done. This isn't ready to go out to public consultation, and I agree with Councillor O'Leary.
Gosh. Councillor Kimber. Councillor Kimber, please.
Councillor Paul Kimber, Isle of Portland, Labour. I'm rather saddened by the tone of the debate tonight. We have to remember that the people out there, the people that elected us, are our employers. If we feel, if we feel that this is completely utter wrong, then we can campaign amongst our communities. I do suggest be very, very careful that we can take a sort of a holier than thou position. So be very careful. Our employers are out there and they're watching us all the time. I know I've had quite a few on the phone to me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. I don't have anybody else from the floor.
Councillor Spencer would like to answer a question, and then Peter reserved the right to come back.
Councillor Flower would like to answer a question, and then we make a comment. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to ask a question of myself, really. Yeah, we are very careful, Paul. This is about the third time we've been out to consult on the Weymouth warding, and this is another opportunity for the community to get involved. If we don't send it out, they can't. So this is a mechanism, not an outcome, it's a mechanism to give people another chance. And I will say this to you, that 99.99% of the population don't give a damn about the warding. They don't. They worry about the services and the work that you local members do on their behalf. We understand the importance of warding. The general public, broadly, don't.
Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and I do apologise for putting my hand up so late. But at the risk of causing Councillor Leary real disquiet, and I am feeling myself, I do agree with you. And everyone else being slightly disorientated as well with me saying that. I'd like to give you a very quick example. We have, I absolutely agree that we need to go to consultation, but we need to make sure that the questions we're asking are the right questions. And Councillor O'Leary is right, that at the moment they aren't. And my example is this. On Christmas Eve, I was delivering Christmas food parcels, and the addresses I was given to deliver were all Chesil View, White Regis. And I questioned that and said, do you mean Chesil View, or do you mean what has recently been called Chesil View? Oh, I mean what's been recently called Chesil View. So for 3 hours on Christmas Eve, afternoon and evening, I drove around the no longer named Chesil View in White Regis and didn't find a single family who needed to receive the Christmas food parcels. I then phoned various people and they said, oh, no, it is the actual Chesil View, White Regis. And I popped along there and very quickly delivered the food parcels. That comes about because the falsely named Chesil View is in Chickrell Ward, because it's right at the end of White Regis, and for an anomaly back in the 70s, it was put into Chickrell, but it's actually in White Regis. And that's what we're trying to correct. So we're not being petty or silly. I certainly wouldn't like to contribute my heart attack the next day to the fact that I traipsed around the countryside with food parcels, but I don't suppose it helped. And I just think that let's ask the right questions and then we'll get the answers that we really need. So please, I appreciate all the work you've done, but we still need to do a little bit more, I think. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, and it's good to see you back. Oh, right, sorry. What's his name? I don't know. Councillor Legg.
Howard Legg, not Robin Legg, please.
Councillor, we weren't sure which leg it was.
Thank you. It was on, but it obviously went off. Somebody put it off. I've reviewed or followed this consultation procedure that's been ongoing, and when it came to the council last time, where the whole of Dorset was being considered, of course, there are certain areas which are a bit dicey, of which, well, they're before us this evening, were referred back, if you like, for further consideration. 2 points occurred to me. One is that every time we go out to consultation, the proposal that follows that seems to go against the majority decision in that consultation. So there's no point going out to another consultation because that will presumably suggest another unsatisfactory solution. And it is an unsatisfactory solution because when the public question was being asked by the Weymouth Town Councillor, Spencer reiterated the fact that we didn't always have to follow, of course, what the majority of people say. And just now, he also said that most people don't comment on the ward boundaries. But there's nevertheless that the last consultation was outnumbered 4-1 in favour of which option was presented to this review committee to consider. And they've come out with the one that was least popular. And that, to me, means there's something wrong. And finally, I just want to say the main problem here is the ward boundaries of Dorset Council are wrong. That is where the problem exists, and those are the ones that ought to be altered first. And then we can sort out later on, based on communities, as to how to do Weymouth Town Council and maybe other areas in the Dorset as well. So at the moment, this is a bit of a fudge. It's putting a worse solution in than the present solution, in my view, and therefore I can't possibly go along with voting for that.
Thank you for your opinion, Councillor Legg. So I'm now going to ask Councillor Wolfe to do his closing speech. Thank you.
Thank you. So we take seriously the comments that have been made. I would point out that the group consisted of the leader and deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, the Independents, the Greens and the Conservatives, and wrestled hard and very long with a series of difficult choices to meet the requirements of the Boundary Commission in terms of numbers, in terms of boundaries, and a variety of other issues we had to take into account. I absolutely emphasise we are still in the process of consultation. No decisions have been made. It is, in my view, a little bit like tuning triple carburettors, because every time you move one little dial, it affects something elsewhere. And whatever you end up with will be a compromise, and we need to try and find the most effective and satisfactory compromise. So I urge all of you people to stand on your own legs. No, I can't crack that joke. I urge all of you people to work hard with your communities to come up with alternatives that meet the requirements of the Boundary Commission while satisfying local community requirements and satisfying numbers. It's all very well to say, this won't work for me, but we need to find something that is an unambiguous improvement on what we've got at the moment. I don't think that's difficult. I don't think it's impossible, and I think it is worth spending a little bit more time on engagement and on consultation, because I actually don't agree that you won't. You will always find it will be a compromise, and I had 10 years as planning board chair at Purbeck, and all I could guarantee you is with every single planning application that came, more people would disagree with the results of the planning committee than would agree with it, because that's the nature of the beast. So we have to find something that meets the requirements we've got forward. So I urge all of those people who have issues related to this to engage with your local community so that we can come back with a sensible option that will be a bit of a compromise, You won't satisfy everybody, but it will try and get over some of the issues that you've raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wharf. So I think we'll now put this to the vote.
The vote is now open. Just a few more votes to come in if you haven't voted. Where is she? Councillor Dunseith, would you mind pressing your button again? Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Dyer, would you mind voting again for us? Is he behind? He's gone. Oh, okay. I can't see. Councillor Boren. Sorry. Councillor Roberts, would you mind pressing your voting button just once more for us? Thank you. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. The vote's closed. And that's 46 votes in favour, 14 against, 11 abstentions. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 11 is the calendar of meetings. And if Councillor Flower hasn't lost his voice, I'd like him to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Matter of process that we have to bring our calendar of dates to full council and members to approve. So I'll move the recommendation as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. And this proposal is going to be seconded by Councillor O'Leary, I understand.
Yes, I find myself in an unusual position of agreeing with the leader. So yes, I'm happy to second the proposal.
Councillor Lacey-Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Knox-Turin, Lacey-Clark from the Blandford Forum Ward with my co-councillor, Councillor Byron Quayle. I brought this up last year, I'm pretty sure the year before as well. All of our meetings are on Thursdays, except for 2 budget meetings for full council, which are on Tuesdays. I have been told that that's to do with timings, but I can't understand why we can't just do them the Thursday before and the carryover the Thursday afterwards in case of emergencies. It annoys me that everything is on a Thursday for full council except for those 2, and I really would like that to be considered in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I hope my lungs manage to keep up with my mouth this time. I talked about calendar meetings and daytime and evening meetings, stretching all the way back to the joint committee in the Shadow Authority when we were setting up how we were going to run this authority. And it seems to me that I've brought this year on, and still here we are with a calendar of meetings that is all daytime meetings. So I talked earlier about constructive criticism. In a mature local government authority, there should be constructive criticism, and I'm afraid, Madam Chairman, that's what you're getting now. Because the calendar of meetings that we have precludes members of the public of a working age or in employment from actually taking what is their right to stand for local government. Provided they fulfil what was in the Local Government Act, any member of the public, no matter what race, colour, religion, sex, gender, or identity or financial dependency, has the right to stand in local government. And bringing forward a calendar which is on the daytime meetings, apart from full council in the evening, precludes those members of the public and working councillors in this chamber from actually fulfilling their role within the committees that I'm sure they would like to do. And I believe I've got cross-party support on this, Madam Chairman. And as I said, from members of the public standing for local government. And that can't be right. So I myself am quite fortunate in that my work can be flexible and I tend to work in the evenings. So, Madam Chairman, I find myself in a position of burning the candle at the beginning and at the end and in the middle. And as much as I hate to admit it, I'm not a young man anymore. It's eventually going to catch up with me. So, Madam Chairman, I would desperately ask the leader if he could address this situation. I'm not going to call for a deferment because it's too late in the day, and out of respect to the members in this chamber who all need to populate their diaries, and I understand that it's too late in the day to change it now, but I would call upon the leader for a meaningful conversation and a way forward on how we can address what I believe is quite a serious issue, and I don't think it does the council any favours in the way we look in the eyes of the public in preventing those members of the public from standing for local office. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Ireland.
Thank you. Bartlett's comments back in the Shadow Cabinet and the Shadow Authority, we expressed an aspiration to be different, and we haven't been. We've had meetings daytime apart from full council. It does preclude attending meetings during the day. I find that difficult because I have a full-time job, as many others in the council do. And I appreciate we had a survey recently, but it's sort of marking your own homework, isn't it? Because there is, let's face it, a majority of people here who are retired and don't have a full-time job. And evenings suit them fine, and daytime suit them fine. So, you know, if you want to play golf, you want evening meetings. If you don't want to play golf, you want daytime meetings. But people who work don't have that choice. You know, for example, the budget cafes, I'd have had to take days off work. You know, to do both scrutiny committees and both budgets, that's 4 days off work, and I can't afford to do that. I've got a daughter who's pregnant with my first grandchild. You know, I need to keep my holidays back. I know it's being selfish, but you know, I can't do it. So fortunately, we can watch remotely, but that's obviously not the same as being in the chamber and be able to contribute as the same. So I would like to see this council work together. And when we go into the elections, let's face it, we've got elections in 2024. I'm sure all parties here need candidates to stand. And let's face it, for democracy, we want people to stand. And we want a cross-party and a cross-demographic contingent in this chamber. And so we should be having things that allow people with jobs to actually attend council meetings and make a contribution.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ireland. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to support those comments that are made by Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Ireland. They do raise a very valid and important, I think, very important reason, because being as one of the younger members in the chamber, it is very difficult. It is sometimes to have a work and obviously work-life balance. It is also difficult sometimes, you know, to attend meetings. It is during the daytime. Fortunately, I know I am lucky. I am one of the luckier ones because obviously I am self-employed. I run my own business, so I am my own boss. But obviously there are younger members out there that, of course, that don't have that luxury. So I would definitely support about definitely of this council moving forward about other ways that we can look to try and address this balance, because I think it would be really important, especially for getting younger members to stand in the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Jesperson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. In the spirit of friendly cross-party working, I would just like to put a counter view. From my point of view, I have 9 parish councils in my ward. They all meet in the evenings. Many of my evenings, indeed most of my evenings, are already full with community activities. Indeed, I've had to send apologies to Stourpane Parish Council this evening because I'm here. So I appreciate what you're saying, but the counter view is that actually for those of us with large wards with many, many parishes, our evenings are already full, not playing golf or anything like that, but actually working for our communities. So I just suggest that as another way of looking at it. Thank you. Oh, and the other point that must be made, of course, is that we are all entitled to reasonable time off by our employers in order to be a councillor. I think for the public listening, it's important to make that point. Thank you.
Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Jesperson for nicking my words. Sorry. I have the government website on my laptop. I have been a councillor for 24 years now, and I was one of the youngest at Dorset County Council when I first appeared in 2001, and I was working. So I know firsthand how awkward employers can make it to give you time off during the day to attend meetings. However, just to confirm what Councillor Jesperson has said, on the government website, time off for public duties. Employees can get time off work for certain public duties as well as their normal holiday entitlement. Employers can choose to pay them for this time, but they don't have to. It then talks about jury service. Who qualifies for time off? A magistrate, a local councillor, and then it goes on to mention others. So, yes, I know employers make it difficult. I work for John Lewis. My local branch made it very difficult, but the head office supported me. I know it's difficult, but we do have a right for reasonable time off to attend our duties in giving something back to the community. So, just to speak in support of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Coombs. Councillor Sutton.
But it's ever so late, and I don't think it's time to have the debate about the pros and cons now. I think we should go to the vote.
Okay, I'm going to ask Councillor Flower to wrap up before the vote. Thank you.
She's going to ask me to wrap up. I mean, that's good, isn't it? I just want to say, it was an interesting debate, but it's not what's before us. We're to agree the calendar of dates for this upcoming council year. But what I'm going to suggest, and thank you very much to Shane Bartlett for his comments, and I agree that perhaps we should allow members another opportunity to look at the arrangements of whether they are daytime meetings, evening meetings, or a mixed economy of both. And I'm going to, perhaps outside this meeting, Chairman, I have checked this with the appropriate authorities in the council. I'd like to have a conversation with the chairman of the Audit and Governance Committee with the view of setting up a cross-party task and finish group to have a look at this once and for all. We've had 3 surveys and it always comes back as a curate's egg. So I think we need to have a cross-party discussion, and I pick up on what Nick Ireland said, bring it back in time, make a decision, and then the calendar for 24-25 will reflect either what we've got now or something different. Thanks, Chairman. As well.
Right, we're now going to the vote, please. Thank you very much.
The vote is now open. Yeah. Last votes for anybody not voted, please. The vote's now closed. And the results of the vote are 60 for, 4 against and 3 abstentions. The motion is therefore carried.
Thank you very much. We are running up to an issue now which Jonathan will explain before he leaves us, actually.
Thank you, Chairman. It's 9:20 now. You've got the pay policy statement to come, and there is a danger that the meeting will extend beyond 3 hours. Because of the danger of that, you need to resolve to extend beyond 3 hours. Otherwise, the meeting would automatically adjourn at 9:30. So, could members signal their agreement to go beyond?
Thank you for that. Right. So, agenda item 12 is the pay policy statement. And at this point, Matt Prosser, Jonathan Mayer and Aidan Dunn will now leave the council chamber. Are you listening, please? They're leaving the council chamber. Their places will be taken by Grace Evans, Deputy Monitoring Officer. Okay, it's our Jackie instead. And Chris Matthews, Interim Head of HR. Is that all right? Do we still have Chris Matthews? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Just checking my bits of paper are saying the right things. So I'm now going to ask Councillor Jill Haynes to introduce the report.
Stop it. Yeah, we will try and get through this as quickly as possible, but it is a quite complex and rather dry matter. So if I can scamper through my bit as fast as possible. As required by the Localism Act of 2011, this report sets out the pay policy statement for Dorset Council for the financial year 23-24. The Act places a requirement on local authorities to produce a statement on an annual basis, setting out their policies on remuneration of their chief officers and the relationship between the remuneration of its chief officers and other officers. As an organisation, we are a reflection of the hard work and quality of our staff. We are privileged in Dorset that we have an excellent workforce throughout the organisation, of whom we can be very proud. In August 22, a cross-party working group was set up to review the pay policy. The working group's remit was a relatively narrow one, to look at the pay ranges the council has now in place for its senior roles to ensure that we can continue to recruit and retain the best talent into these roles. The working group agreed that the evidence provided suggested that the council's current pay ranges may not provide sufficient headroom and flexibility to ensure that we can remain competitive when recruiting to any chief officer role. However, the working group took a cautious and pragmatic approach and agreed that it was not appropriate at this time to increase the pay ranges of our chief officer roles due to the current cost of living pressures being experienced by our communities. The decision of the working group was to recommend to full council the following amendments to the council's pay policy for chief officers. That the introduction of a market forces premium of up to £15,000 to be applied on a case-by-case basis where there is specific evidence of a difficulty to recruit or to retain employees in chief officer roles. For this to be applied, there will need to be clear evidence of salaries being offered by other local authorities above the current pay ranges for the chief officers in Dorset Council. Any recommendation to apply a market forces premium will be made in consultation with the head of paid service by the relevant portfolio holder and then approved by the portfolio holder for corporate development and transformation with the leader of the council. In the case of the head of paid service, any decision to apply a market forces premium will be made by the portfolio holder for corporate development and transformation and the leader. Market forces payments will be reviewed every 3 years to ensure the justification and rationale for payment can still be evidenced. I would like to give my grateful thanks to all the members of the working group and to our HR staff, in particular Chris Matthews, for their input and time on what was a very difficult topic. I need to bring to your attention 9.6 in the policy, which is something that we have to do as part of the legislation. And you'll see detailed the multiplier between the highest and the median pay within the council. This is a statutory duty that we publish in this format, and I'm pleased to bring to your attention the reduction in the cap. So in 2021, it was 6.94 to 1, and it's down in 2023 to 6.26 to 1. I thought you'd also like to understand what this might look like as not a medium figure. And it's a medium figure, and it's really complicated as to why it has to be that, and I really don't want to go into it tonight because we could be here till midnight. But when we look across the whole of the staff, the ratio in January 22 was 9.4 to 1, and in January 23, 8.6 to 1, which I believe is very positive news for the council and the staff. It's been a long evening. Thank you for your time on the matter. I propose the recommendation, and I believe Councillor Brian Heatley, who is a member of the working group, will second for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brian Heatley, Councillor Brian Heatley, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brian Heatley from Robble and Wyke in Weymouth. I shall be very brief, and I'll do it now because maybe then there'll be no debate. The important point here is we've got to pay the market rates. Dorset Council can't change the situation. We've got to pay the market rates if we're to get the energetic and ingenious officers we need. And that, to my mind, is the end of the argument. But there is a second point. I think I, like a lot of people, when they first came to this, looked at these numbers and thought, they're very high. I'm worried about the increasing inequality in this country. And I think the ratio of the highest paid to the lowest paid, a nice simple ratio, is something that is a symptom of that inequality in our country. One of the things that's been very important this year, though, is the effect of the pay settlement. It was a pay settlement, it was a novel pay settlement, and we've not talked about it much, but I thought it was fantastic. We gave each employee about £2,000, not a percentage rise. That meant the bottom employee got a 10% rise, and the top employee, and it's a pity he seems to have gone, only got about 1%. Now, that has had the effect on that ratio. Instead of a ratio of 8.6 between the top and the bottom, we've gone down to 8. I think that's great, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very keen to support this paper. Thank you.
Ooh. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Heatley, I thought it was very succinctly described, which I feel that we're all grateful for, actually. Having said that, is there anybody that has an absolute burning desire to put their hand up? Okay, in which case I'm going back to, I think, would you like to say the last few words, or shall I just put it to the vote?
My last few words are thank you, Chairman, and good evening if we could put it to the vote.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The vote is now open. The vote's closed. And the results of the vote are 66 in favour of the recommendations, no votes against and 1 abstention. The recommendations therefore carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll all be thrilled to know that agenda items 13 and 14, urgent items and exempt business, there are none. So at 9:30, I'm going to close the meeting and thank you for your company.